Yeah, so the recording is started. So good morning all. I'm Pushpendra Shekhawat. I am application lead at ENTSO-E for ECCoSP. I am here today with my colleagues from Unicorn. Uh, they will introduce themselves, I would say. So this is the first webinar for the fall release that we just released yesterday, and it is available. The new release is available on our website as well as on the Docker image, which you can download. We will cover is the window installation and upgrade along with the new features that we are introducing as part of it. And in continuation to this webinar, we have another one planned on 3rd of November, which is for the similar one, but for the Unix environment. And then on 14th of November, we have a very first time the Kubernetes webinar. And as you might know, we introduced the Kubernetes support from the spring release. And 14th, we will be arranging very first webinar. All the invites are already sent. Just in case if you have not received, you can message me, or you can go to the ECCoSP website where the registration link is available. And you will, once you register, you will automatically get the team invite for it. So as it is planned as webinar, so by default, your mics and videos are muted. And just in case if you need to ask some question, you can send it over the chat or raise your hand. I will unmute you to allow you to raise your question. So now I'm handing over to the Unicorn team who will guide us through this webinar.
Yeah, thank you for the intro and welcome once more on today's webinar. And today's topic is the installation and upgrade of ECCoSP on Windows. My name is Daniel Janota. I'm an ECCoSP analyst and I'm working in Unicorn as analyst since 2021. And together with me, there is also Jiří and Anna.
Hello, my name is Jiří Kakrda, and I currently work as the ECCoSP software architect, and I work in the Unicorn for the last 6 years.
Hi, I'm Anna. I'm the project manager of ECCoSP development, and I'm on ECP since 2019.
So let's move to the agenda. Firstly, we will check some information about new features in the latest release. And then we will move to prerequisites and some general information about ECCoSP, to some description of hardware requirements and other necessary steps before the installation itself. And in the second part, the more practical part, we will install, configure, and register the ECP endpoint and EDX toolbox together with Java 17. And then also we will upgrade those applications. So let's check some new features, latest release, some important information. There is no changes in compatibility or OS or DB support. So we are still supporting the same operating system and databases. Regarding the new features, EDX network configuration, for example, is being prioritized. So if you have more messages waiting for processing, the network configuration should be moved to the top of the queue and be processed with priority. Also, big handy change. The component directory will automatically reload its SSL configuration after a certificate renewal. So there's no need to restart the component directory anymore. The health endpoint or actuator was extended with some additional metrics, so the monitoring is now a little bit more interesting, let's say. And also there was some optimization and improvement of encryption and decryption implementation, which basically means the memory usage is now a little bit better. Yeah. So let's check the prerequisites and some general information. All this information can be found in ECP and EDX installation and upgrade guides. And during the practical part, we will be also checking those guides and checking the procedures there. So let's start with a description of minimum hardware requirements. There is no change compared to the previous version, so it's still the same 4 cores for ECP endpoint, together with 8 gigs of RAM and 40 gigabytes of storage, and half of it for EDX Toolbox. It's important to note that this is only some estimation, and real requirements can be changed according to the performance requirements. It really depends on the message traffic. We also recommend to use virtual machines, and the reason is pretty simple. It's much easier to resize them if some more resources is needed. So that will be hardware requirements. Regarding the network flows open in firewall, the ports are still being the same. So before the installation, there's needs to open some flows. For ECCoSP components, it's being specifically for ECP endpoint. It's port 8443 for both inbound and outbound connections. This port is being used for the graphical user interface, web services, and REST API. Then for outbound connection, there is port 5671. This port is being used by ECP broker, and it's used for messaging, and inbound port 5672 for the ECP endpoints interim broker, again for the messaging. For the EDX Toolbox, there is needed only inbound connection to port 8443, again used for web services, pull interface, the default one, and graphical user interface. And then for both inbound and outbound connections, the port 5672. This one is again used for the communication with ECP endpoint for the messaging and etc. Also, another port that would need to be opened in firewall is the ports for external databases, if it is used by the ECCoSP, but we will get a little bit later on some next slides. Yeah, regarding communication protocols, ECCoSP is by default using AMQPS enabled for messaging, and HTTPS for REST API and graphical user interface. Those two are default ports, protocols. And yeah, regarding deployment types, ECCoSP offers two possibilities, two modes of the deployment: standalone, or also known as single deployment, or the high availability deployment. In the standalone mode, there is no need for other services like external database or etc. But it is also possible to use external database and also using the standalone deployment just with one instance of ECP or EDX. This is therefore also the simplest installation option. And then there is the high availability deployment. In this mode, the external database is needed. And for the cluster deployment, at least 2 nodes of ECP or EDX are also needed. Both nodes are then connected to the same shared database, and therefore they are acting like one node, one single instance within the ECP network. The main advantage of this deployment is higher availability. So when one component goes down, the system will still continue to function. So those are the types of deployment options for that. Let's move to the next slide about support to databases and some other preparation before installing ECCoSP. As I mentioned, ECCoSP can be configured and by default is configured to use the embedded database. In this case, it's Apache Derby. And this database is completely managed by the ECP and EDX application itself. And it does not need any other additional setup. Alternatively, you can use some external database. This database must be installed before, installed and configured before starting the application, the ECCoSP application, and ideally it should be installed on a different server. ECCoSP currently supports the following four databases. So Oracle 19c, MS SQL 2019, MySQL 8, and PostgreSQL 13. On the screen, you can also see the default ports that are being used by the databases. And yeah, more information about the database installation and some specific configuration for ECCoSP, and also creation of application schema and configuration of user access can be found in ECP and EDX installation guides, chapters, external databases. More information about it, also with an example of connection strength and etc. Yeah, so let's move to the next slide. Also, another really important step before installing the ECCoSP is to obtain the installers. So for the ECCoSP clients, so ECP endpoint and EDX toolbox, those installers can be downloaded from the ENTSO-E web page. On the link you can see on the screen. So ENTSO-E.eu/ECP or EDX. And regarding the central components, their availability is a little bit limited, and you need to request the access to the ENTSO-E share file. This access can be granted by push button. Another thing you need to do before the installation, or more specifically registration, is to obtain the component code. This component code must be unique within each ECP network and all synchronized networks. Basically, we just can't have this duplicity within the network. The energy identification coding, also known as EIC scheme, is mostly used. And in case of ECCoSP, specifically object type V, so-called EIC code, is mostly used. This V code is used for the indication of the locality, and mostly these V codes are being used as component codes of the ECCoSP components. The valid EIC code is then issued by your local or central issuing office for your country. Let's move to the next slide. Do you have any questions regarding this theory part?
We don't have any more questions in the chat.
Okay, so we can quickly move to the installation and upgrade itself. So it's a bit more interesting part of this webinar. We will start with the installation of Java 17, and then continue with installation of ECP endpoint and installation with EDX toolbox. We will register the ECP endpoint and then configure the EDX toolbox to be correctly connected to its ECP endpoint. And then in a second part, there will be upgrade of ECP endpoint and EDX toolbox from the previous version. So let's start with installation. So firstly, we need to install Java 17. Then we will need to install the ECP endpoint, this time with encrypted passwords. And then we will just start it, register it, update the runtime configuration. That's a part of prerequisite for the EDX, as well as add a new user to users properties. And then, yeah, we can restart the endpoint to apply those changes. And then we will install the EDX toolbox again with encrypted passwords, configure it, and start it. Then we just can do some quick smoke test, start to send message, etc. So let's start with the Java installation. So let's check the documentation first. And Java is described in chapter 5.1, right here. So chapter 5.1 Java, and we are installing Java on Windows. So we will download the GRE 17 package from this website. After the installation of Java, we will configure the JRE home system variable. This is important. The ECCoSP is using JRE home, not Java home. And yeah, there's also description of how to set the variable. There's also note to make sure the Java home system variable is not configured. And yeah, that will be the whole process for Java installation. So we can proceed. Server. Here, and as you can see, we have prepared the Java 17 GRE package. And can check that there is no Java installed currently. The Java command is not recognized, which means that there is no Java currently. So we can proceed with the installation. Next, accept the terms and license agreement. Next again, and right now I would just change the Java files association. So our Java files will be open with this Java, and also in this case, to make the JRE variable setup a little bit easier, I can install the Java home variable and then just change it. So let's do that. The next button and install. So Java is successfully installed. Finish it and change the variable. So in the system properties, environment variables, you can here see the Java home variable, which was created during the installation, and I need to change it to JRE. Right now, the server is prepared for the installation of ECP endpoint. Just confirm those changes so it will be applied, and we can proceed with the installation. So with this, let's move to the chapter 7.2 which is the installation of ECP endpoint. Yeah, here on Windows. So the whole getter is installation of ECP endpoint, and 7.2 is specifically for Windows. Some variables used in the guide, so generally install path is for the target installation directory, version is the version of the ECP, and ECP jar is the path to the ECP endpoint installation package. This table is just important, so you will know what all those paths and stuff means within the documentation. Some specific prerequisites for Windows system is to make sure that the Microsoft Management Console or services snapping is not running during the installation, because it can prevent the successful registration of the ECP service. So we can continue with the installation itself, and we'll be installing the ECP endpoint via graphical user interface. The installation is pretty simple, just double-click the jar file. If the Java is registered to execute the files, the window should open. Then I will select the correct installation type and the target directory, and then etc. There will be also the option to install the ECP endpoint as Windows service, together with the option to set up the automatic start after the service start of the service. And then there will be the configuration of the passwords. In this case, we will use the encrypted passwords. So this is done via this installer. Here's just a quick description of what all those options mean, etc. Basic setup, we will do that during the installation itself. So let's proceed with installation. So I will choose the installation type. In this case, I will install it as standard application. We can also install it to existing application server or upgrade the existing ECP installation. But in this case, we will install it as standard application. We'll choose the installation path to the folder that I have prepared, this B folder, and then in next. Here we can choose if we want to register the application as Windows service. So in this case, yes. We can also allow the automated start of the service after service startup. Right now the application is being installed, and here we can set up the default password, which is mostly plain text and the word password, or define some custom passwords. With this option, we need to also select which type of user password we want to use. So encrypted in this case, and also for technical accounts, we'll use the encrypted option. The description of the technical accounts is here. So it's the automated key store, submitted on broker, and user in the database. We will see that the next screen here. We need to use some key for the encryption and also confirm it. I will choose the encryption algorithm. By default, this PB with HMAC, SHA 512 and AES 256 is used, so we'll use it. Default as default value. Next button, and then just fill these passwords for administration login. the authentication key store. Again, all passwords need to be confirmed in the wrong broker. And yeah, so we stay here. And some key stores in the database, password for them. Yeah, next button. Yeah, type that password correctly, so the password change is when we proceed. And now the installation is finished. Yeah, we can generate the automatic installation script, but the installation was completed successfully. So we can hit the done button and check the next steps within the documentation. So we have just description of the installation, and the next step will be starting the application. Regarding starting and stopping, there are two options. We can start with using the user interface or using command line. Based command line, we can use the SC command, or we can use the startup and shutdown scripts. But we will use this time the graphical user interface for starting the application. So basically using the services application on Windows. So services, and here you can see the ECP endpoint service installed. So you can start it. And the next step will be the registration of the ECP endpoint. Yeah, installation verification. So we can check the service status that is running, check the log files if there are some errors. But most importantly, we can check the graphical user interface on the server ID and 8443 port. And if there is displayed the ECP endpoint graphical user interface, basically means that the installation was successful. Yeah, here just brief description of the installation, and we can move to the registration. So chapter 8. Yeah. And here chapter with ECP endpoint registration and some functional smoke test. So we'll register the ECP endpoint. The registration process is again pretty simple. We will access the graphical user interface, and yeah, if we are using the default key store and the HTTPS connector, it will be also necessary to confirm that this is secure page, etc. Then we will need to log in, depending on the configuration of the authentication method. We would use the ECP users properties for the definition of the users in ECP endpoint, or also keycloak or LDAP server, as I mentioned, depending on the configured authentication method. Yeah, then the registration screen should be displayed. So we'll just insert the keys there, fill the password, fill some information about component directory and check the connectivity to it, and then also fill some information about the endpoint, accept the GDPR disclaimer, and send the registration request. So let's proceed with the registration. So yeah, here's the warning screen to accept and continue, and then log in. to the graphical user interface. Yeah. Insert the registration key store, download it from the company directory, and fill the password for it. Then some information about the company directory. So we'll copy the URL and fill its code, in this case Zoom, and check the connectivity. As you can see, the connectivity test was successful, so we can continue with the registration process. Right now, we need to fill some information about the endpoint. So the component code, I will use cheetah in this case. In reality, you would put your EXE code here. Optionally, we can choose some project name and environment name. So let's say webinar as project name, and then this is installed Windows. So environment name Windows. Then some company information, so organization, we can webinar, some contact person, Euro, why not? Its contact email. So we can some email there, and contact phone, starting with 2 zeros, and just the phone number. There is also this GDPR disclaimer that all information about your company and this endpoint will be shared with the company directory and all components within the same network. So everybody in the network will have access to this information. So I'm just checking it. We have read it, and we can submit the request. Right now, the admin will reload its configuration and move to the registration status, which is the status when the endpoint is waiting for the approval on component directory. This is also described in this documentation. So at this point, you just need to wait for the component directory administrator to approve the request. And after that, we can continue with the configuration of the message path and MQP context, for example. And we can then continue with the function smoke test. So I will just quickly approve the registration request. Yeah, the registration request was successfully received by the component directory, so I can approve it. And right now, we just need to wait until the next minute. So the registration status checker will check the status and change it to the active. Again, the ECP endpoint will reload this configuration, and after that, should be moved to the active status, which basically means registered and able to send some messages. So next step will be setting up the MQP context. This step is optional, and you can set up any other integration channel that you would like to use. But for the EDX toolbox, it would be necessary to configure also this MQP context. So I will go to the runtime configuration and set these 3 properties to these values. So we'll enable the MQP context, set MQP API send handler, and select the types that will be received by the send handler. So let's move to the next page. And to change the runtime configuration, we have actually two options. We can export it and update the exported file and import it back, or we can change it in the graphical user interface. So I will use this option. I will find the ECP endpoint MQB API enabled property and set it to true, confirm configuration, and then also find those two ECP endpoints handler bin name and type name, and set the MQB API handler and also the types, which will be asterisk. So all types will be received and then sent to EDX by this MQB API send handler. Confirm this configuration, confirm this field, and then save the configuration itself. This endpoint should again reload this configuration, and basically means that the change was applied. So we can continue with the function smoke test. So firstly, we would need to configure the message path. The message path can be set on the settings page, the message path section. And then we will wait for the synchronization. So all components and this endpoint as well will get the information that there is this message path that can be used. And then we can just send the message to itself or some other endpoint within the network. So yeah, so let's set message path. So let's go to the settings page, section paths, and click the new path button. Here you can set the senders, you can limit it to only, let's say, one endpoint within the network, or we can use, like, everybody can use this message path. Also, we can set some message type specific for this message path. In this case, I will use the asterisk, so all message types will be allowed. And also, we can set the path type, which is neither direct if the direct messaging is used, or indirect if the ECP broker is used for the messaging, which in this case is. So I will choose the broker, the only broker in the network. And then we can also set some wallet to value. So this message path will be valid only to Friday, 11 p.m., let's say. Save it, and right now the ECP endpoint have saved the message path, and after the synchronization, it will be able to send the messages, and also many receive the messages. So I can, just to speed some things up, to put the configuration, this will invoke the synchronization job. So the endpoint will synchronize with the component directory. We can see that the endpoint was synchronized, and we can try to send a message. So let's send it to itself, some text message type, and then some testing file as a message payload, send it, and it should be received. Yeah, status is changed to received. We can see the message also in inbox. And if you go to the dashboard and click the blue tile, we can see the message statistics, and we can see that the Gorilla broker is connected. So that was everything for the functional smoke test. By this, we just confirm that everything works as it should. Yeah, so next step will be the preparing this endpoint for the integration with EDX Toolbox. So we will just quickly move the EDX installation guide, and it's chapter 6.1. And yeah, I have 1 and 4. Yeah, some general prerequisites before installing the EDX Toolbox. So the ECP, each EDX Toolbox requires its own ECP endpoint, which can be installed locally or some by reachable external server. And we just need to enable the MQP protocol, which we have done by setting the MQP context. And also we need to set the toolbox user in the user's properties and groups properties configuration files. Process is described right here. So here's the configuration we've done during the smoke test. And there is also the description of the change in the user properties and groups properties. So let's quickly do that. So I will go to the ECP endpoint folder and change the user's properties file. Here you can see that the password has been successfully encrypted during the installation. And I will put a new user for the toolbox. So toolbox, and we will use password as a password. And also add the toolbox to the groups, the properties, and to the users. Here you can see that there is also a BA user. So if you want to integrate some other business application to the ECP endpoint, it can use the BA as a user. It can be connected to the ECP endpoint. To apply the configuration change, we just need to restart the ECP endpoint service. And this will be everything for the installation of ECP endpoint. You can then just check if the toolbox started successfully, if the endpoint started successful. But in the meantime, we can also check the installation process for EDX Toolbox. And this is starting in chapter 6.2. Installation on Windows, this time in EDX installation guide. Here, let's say the header or first chapters are the same as on ECP endpoint, but modified for the EDX. So similar variables within the guide are used. And there is the prerequisites, so the ECP endpoint accessible via the MQP protocol. And yeah, the installer copied to the server. Yeah, we have Java installed, so we can continue with the installation. Again, we can install the application using the command line or using the graphic user interface. Again, we will use the graphic user interface for the installation. So just start the installer, then basically go through in the same way as it was on ECP endpoint. The installation process is really similar. So we can proceed with that. So let's execute the installation file for EDX Toolbox. Here we have just only two options, and there's a new EDX Toolbox installation and the upgrade of the already existing Toolbox installation. So in this case, I will choose the new Toolbox installation, select the correct path to the installation directory. Again, the already prepared folder for EDX Toolbox, and hit the next button. Here by default, we have checked this check button that we want to register the application as Windows service. And also on the toolbox of the EDX, we have this option to change default ports only if the ECP is installed on the same server as this EDX Toolbox. What this will do is that it will change the default 8443 port to 9443, and also it will change all other ports to avoid the conflict of those two components on the same server. So basically, if you are installing the EDX Toolbox on the same server as ECP endpoint, you need to change the ports. And on Windows, this is the easier way. Just check this checkbox and hit the next button. We can also allow the automatic start of the service. Yeah, wait for installation, and then set the passwords. Again, still process as on ECP endpoint, so I will choose the custom password. I will choose the encrypted option and set some key for the encryption. Set the encryption algorithm. Again, I will use the same default one, and then just fill those passwords.
So you will probably need to change the user configuration again.
Not really. I'm using password as password, so just to make it simple. The next button and wait for the password change. And right now the EDX Toolbox installation was completed successfully. And so you can check the documentation. What are the next steps? Yeah, so again, the procedure is described here. Very similar to ECP. And then we can cannot just start the application. We need to firstly configure it. So let's move to chapter 7, where the configuration of EDX Toolbox is described. Just need to find it. Yeah. So here in this chapter, EDX Toolbox configuration, there is a description of the configuration files used by EDX Toolbox, and also some configuration properties in EDX properties, which is the main configuration file. So this parameters needs to be changed in the default non-HA installation, so in a single deployment. So the toolbox code, which needs to be the same as the ECP endpoint component code, the code of service catalog within the network. If the pool interface, pool messaging will be used, we also need to change the public URL for the pool, and then also ECP broker, IQ port, and IQP host. Just to, in this case, check or change it if the ECP endpoint is installed on some remote server. So let's proceed with the configuration. So again, I will move to the toolbox directory and open the EDX properties. So right here, I will change the toolbox code. This was feedback. Set some the service catalog code, which within this network is Lion. Let me just check if I'm correct. Yeah. It's Lion, and then we can continue. Here's the public URL property. We will not use the pull messaging, so I can leave it with localhost, but in case you want to use the pull mechanism, pull messaging, you need to change the localhost to the IP address of the server. And yeah, then also here you can see that the password for the key stores and users and everything are encrypted. You can just quickly check that it worked during the installation. And right here, there are two blocks of configuration. The first one is for the internal broker configuration. So you can see that the default port 5672 was changed to 6672 to again avoid the collision with the ECP endpoint, which is using the same port. And here is the configuration of the ECP endpoints in the broker. So the toolbox will be connected to this address with this port and with these properties. So to continue, we have already added the toolbox user and toolbox group to the ECP endpoint, so I can just leave the toolbox here. I just need to change the out alias from the key store, because we will be using the same authentication key store from ECP endpoint just in the EDX toolbox. This is the simplest way how to ensure the secure connection between ECP endpoint and EDX toolbox. Again, here, just to ECP model out. Yeah, this will be everything for the configuration, and the rest can be default. And then we just need to copy the out store from TCP endpoint to EDX toolbox. Yeah, you can delete the default one and rename this one to just key store, because by default the EDX toolbox is configured to use file named keystore.jks. So you can just exchange it in this way. And I believe this will be everything for the configuration, because the ports were changed during the installation process. So we can go back to the chapter 6. Was 6.2. Yeah, so now we can continue with starting of the EDX toolbox. Again, in the same way as on ECP endpoint, we have two options. We can start using the command line or using the graphical user interface. So again, I will start it using the graphical interface. And again, the installation verification is basically the same. Check the service status, check the log files, and check GUI. Yeah, we can access the toolbox on this URL, and then just check the graphical interface. So I will start the toolbox. Here you can see that there is installed service EDX toolbox. So I'll start with it. In the meantime, you can check that the ECP endpoint started successfully after the restart. And then you can just wait for the startup of the toolbox. After that, we will continue with a quick smoke test on the EDX layer. So just send and receive some message. But if the communication works correctly, we'll be able to see it much earlier during the synchronization with the service catalog. So yeah, wait for the toolbox to start. So check maybe the logs. There is something wrong with it. Maybe I made some mistake. So the EDX log as an application log will contain all important information. And let's reload it. There is some issue in connection, maybe. So it's again, and yeah, actually it worked. Yeah, so you can see that the test message that we have sent from ECP was propagated to EDX toolbox, and here you can also see that the toolbox is successfully synchronized with the EDX service catalog, because there is network configuration already loaded. Another important thing to know is that this toolbox needs to be manually added to the EDX network configuration. So it can happen that after the installation, you need to wait for the EDX service catalog administrator to add this toolbox with this code to the network configuration. In our case, it's synchronized immediately because I have done it during the preparation for this webinar. So right now we can send a message to some already existing toolbox. So the toolbox would go Tiger, then some message type and test, and choose some file as a payload. Send it, and here you can see that the message is in status received. If we check the receiver toolbox, we can see the same message also on the receiver. So the installation was successful and messaging works as it should. So I believe that will be everything for the installation of the ECCoSP client on Windows. And if you have any questions, you may ask. Okay. So we can move to the upgrade. So firstly, we will check the version of the preferred user interface of both ECP and EDX components. Then we will stop them and firstly update the ECP endpoint, update configuration, and then start again. And the same thing for the EDX toolbox with the upgrades. And then we can check the versions again and try to send and receive some messages. So let's check the documentation and specifically the ECP upgrade guide and specifically chapter 5.1 here. So chapter 5 ECP upgrade and the 5.1 upgrade on Windows. Again, some description of the variable used within the documentation, but we can continue with the stopping of the application. So again, as well as stopping, we have two options, command line or graphical user interface. So we will stop it using the graphical user interface. So just connect to the correct server. And yeah, you can stop both applications. So you can see that the endpoint and toolbox are currently running. So I will just stop them. Yeah. So the next step will be the Java. We will check the Java version, and if the Java is older than 6 months, that's the latest release, or there is some different Java than Java 17, you would need to update it to Java 17. This is described in this chapter, but this applies only when you're upgrading from ACP 4.10.1 or some lower version that uses different Java than 17. So I will just check Java version. And you can see that currently installed Java is Java 17.0.8. We can continue. Yeah, as I mentioned, this applies only for older version. This is not our case because we are upgrading from 11 version. Then there is internal broker configuration. So because since 4.8.2, the configuration of the internal broker was moved to the specific folder. So if you have some custom changes in the internal broker libraries, you would need to put them to the new configuration files. But this is not our case because we have everything in default setup, and also we are starting on the newer version than 4.8.2. This is just an interesting part, and there is the explanation of what those folders mean. So what can you find in the internal SSL/JKS folder, and when it is used, and also there is description of the ActiveMQ configuration files, when it's used, in which mode, and etc. Look at the backup the internal broker configuration. This is also applies only for 4.8.1 or lower, so not our case. So we can continue with the installation of new application version. Again, we will upgrade the application via graphical user interface. So the procedure is actually a little bit simpler than the installation. We will just open or execute the installation file, then choose the right option, choose the right directory, and then just upgrade it. There is also option to do it via command line, but we will use the graphical user interface. So both page start stop, so we can proceed with the upgrade. So I'll execute an installation file, choose the upgrade an existing ECP installation option and choose the correct path where the ECP is already installed. So again, this EP folder, the next button, and the application will be upgraded. So the installation was completed successfully, and we can proceed with the configuration update. Within this release, there is like no mandatory change, but there is this one, these two, which are recommended. The first one is update of the internal broker configuration files, and we will be putting the prioritized messages through to the used MQP configuration files. So the network configuration on the EDX will be prioritized on the ECP layer. And then also, just connected to another change within this release, we will put some properties for the health endpoint, which was extended to enable the metrics by this property, and then also set some credentials for the GMS health check. So I will copy this and put it to the correct configuration file. So the configuration files are located in the GMS folder. We have enabled, make sure to check it within documentation. It's described in this chapter. We have configured the internal broker use authentication to true. So we are using authentication and we are not using HSM. So basically our active configuration files are located in a GMS/internal SSL JKS folder. And we are also using the non-HA profile, so the single deployment. So we will be editing the ActiveMQ non-HA XML file. So we are using this folder, the configuration file in this folder. It's recommended to change all of them, but in this case, to make it simpler and quicker, we will edit just this one, which we are currently using. So I will open the configuration file and here in each policy entry element, I will add this prioritized messages equals to for each queue that the ECP endpoint is using. So I will just put it in there. Yeah, so this is for all those queues. So the network configuration will be prioritized on the internal broker on the ECP layer, and also proceed with the next configuration change, which is basically enabling the extension of the health endpoint. So we'll enable it with this property, and I will put it to the ECP, the properties configuration file. So here, and I can fit here. So this property will enable all those new metrics, and these two properties will set the credentials for GMS health check. Yeah, so basically we are setting the user and password for an active MQ, and by default we are just reusing the user and password set in these properties. And this is again the block or the internal broken configuration on the endpoint. Yeah, so after this, there is also another subject there of the configuration update, but this is again applies only for when upgrading from 410 or lower. Those are those TLS changes and citrus changes, etc. Another one we can skip because 4.9. The last one. Configure AmpQPS. We are using AmpQPS by default, so no need to change this. This is only when upgrading from 4.7 version. And we are using the default embedded Derby database, so we don't need to change the TLS in the connection string to the MS SQL database. This is just a thing that the MS SQL database connector is forcing the TLS encryption. So if the TLS encryption is not being used by the database, you need to put the encrypt equals false to the connection string to be able to successfully connect to the database. But as I mentioned, we are using Derby database, so we can also skip this chapter as well. And yeah, we can continue with the application start. And two options will use the graphical user interface. We'll start of the ECP endpoint service. I can start it. These two and this, and wait for the startup. This can take a few seconds. And then we can check the EDX upgrade guide to check the upgrade process. The upgrade on Windows is described in chapter 5.1, and it's basically the same process as on ECP endpoint. We'll just stop the application, back up some configuration if necessary. In this case, we are using the default values everywhere, so there's no need to back up any specific configuration. Again, check the Java. Here's also the description how to update Java if you don't have the Java 17. Then again, some internal broker configuration, basically the same information as it was on ECP endpoint since 192. Those configuration files were moved out from the library. And yeah, then just installing version of the application. Again, you can use the command line or regular user interface. And again, go through the same process as it was on ECP endpoint, this time just with EDX toolbox. Then if there was some backup, we can restore configuration, update configuration. So in this case, I will again just put those health endpoint metrics to the EDX properties file, so it will be enabled, and then we can just start the application again. Yeah. So let's check the endpoint. Yeah. Successfully, you can see that we have the 4.12 version, and yeah, the upgrade was successful. So already synchronized, and really, yeah, here we can actually see synchronous version. Interesting. Yeah, so the endpoint was upgraded successfully. And yes, we can continue with the upgrade of EDX toolbox. Yeah. And yeah, so the toolbox is stopped and can continue with the upgrade. So again, I will execute the installation file, select the upgrade option, change the path to the toolbox directory, and hit the next button. Next, the installation was completed successfully. Hit the done button and just quickly update the configuration. So again, I will add those two properties or three properties for the health endpoint to enable it also on the EDX toolbox. So this management endpoint health show details property set to always, and those two ActiveMQ user and password properties to set the credentials for the internal broker. And again, it uses the property or the value set in the property here in this block. So yes, the configuration, and we can start the EDX toolbox. So again, this may take some time to start up. So let's check documentation. So yeah, we have just started it, and yeah, then we can just verify the installation. So again, we can check the service status, we can check the log files, but mostly or the easiest way is to check the graphical user interface. Important thing to mention. After the upgrade of both TCP endpoint and EDX toolbox, I will set its time zone to UTC, but this will not be applied for the already sent and received messages. So on the message page, right here, it can happen if you had some different time zones set before the upgrade. It can happen that there will be an overlap of the messages. So let's say the UTC will set the time back to 1 hour, so new messages will be displayed a little bit lower in the table. Also, and the thing that can happen, there can be some issue with cache, so not all new features on a graphical user interface can be displayed immediately. You might need to clear the cache and reload the page. Not everything is described here in this upgrade notes chapter. And this also applies for both ECP endpoint and EDX toolbox. So let's change the toolbox. You can see it started successfully. We can see that the current version is 1.13. So the upgrade was successful. And we can just send the message to GTAG. Check the messaging works after the upgrade. So message type and also insert some payload, send it, and you can see the messages received. Check the message also on the receiver side, and the message is received here as well. So the messaging works correctly. Well, so that was the last step of the upgrade. And if you have some questions regarding this procedure, you may ask now. If not, then we would like to thank you for your attention, for participating in this webinar, and we'll see you on some next one.
Thanks, Daniel. So thank you for the webinar today. So if anybody has any questions, they can raise your hand and I will unmute you. Or you can message us on the chat. I already provided the link for the YouTube videos where we already have the previous session and some other interesting videos uploaded on the YouTube channel. And the recording from this webinar will also be uploaded on the same place. So you can check after a day or so, it will be available there. And as communicated at the start, on the 3rd of November, we have another session plan for the Unix upgrade and installation, and on 14th of November about the Kubernetes environment. So if there are no further questions, we can close this session. I will wait for a few seconds. If there are any. Okay, so resume no. So thanks, Daniel, for